we go back to the 2024 NBA offseason, I think the Atlanta Hawks have been one of the more fascinating teams. And I know they moved on from DeJounte Murray this offseason, but that's not what I'm referring to. The Atlanta Hawks, they have one of the best young players in all of the NBA, and Trae Young, who just turned the age of 26. He's just about to enter his basketball prime. So many great years of basketball still left ahead of him. And then this offseason, the Atlanta Hawks, they got the biggest prize that you could get from the NBA draft lottery, and that's the number 1 overall pick in the 2024 NBA draft. So I thought them landing this pick, it gave them so many different possibilities, so many directions to go in as an organization. And we see the direction that they went in. They decided to keep all of their young talent. They acquired some guys, Dyson Daniels, draft capital, Larry Nance Jr. in the DeJounte Murray deal, and the Atlanta Hawks, as the NBA season began, I thought they became even more fascinating. And one correlation that I think has been really interesting with the Atlanta Hawks so far this season, and it should really be optimistic for the coaching staff, for the players. I want to look at their offensive rating and their points per game. Now, when I made my first video on the Atlanta Hawks this season, which was probably like a week ago, maybe a little bit over a week ago, they were a top 10 team and total points per game. But when I looked at their offensive rating, they ranked 20th in the NBA. Now, before I get into the correlation, just to fast forward to right now, today, after their most recent win against the Los Angeles Lakers, they're 8th in the NBA in points per game at 117, and they jumped up to 17th in the NBA and offensive rating. Now, with this correlation, what I find very interesting is that the Atlanta Hawks simply could be scoring more points. And we look at that offensive rating stat it's just basically a team's how many points they're getting every 100 possessions, but they also factor in field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, and I believe they might even factor in shot selection. So the Atlanta Hawks have been amongst the best teams in the NBA when it comes to putting up total points per game, but they're not even playing their best basketball. And I think there's a few reasons for that. You guys can let me know if you agree or disagree in the comment section. But we look at some injuries that the Atlanta Hawks received to begin this year. They had to go about a month without DeAndre Hunter, and I think this has been big time because we see what he's been able to do when he's been in the lineup so far this season. He has been amazing, nothing short of amazing. He's getting damn near 20 points each and every night, and he's doing it very, very efficiently. And then also, we know he's a 3-and-D player. And then another player they had to go a little bit of time without is another one of their best half-court scorers and another one of their 3-point shooters, which is Bogdanovich. And he showed me a lot about who he is in those Olympics. He shot that 3, and then he did Melo celebration right to his face. So he definitely has some dog in him and some tenacity, but he had to go about a month of not playing for the Atlanta Hawks as well, and he's starting to get his basketball legs and his shooting touch back under him. So these were two pivotal players that they had to go a little bit of time without. And then also Trae Young. Trae Young has been struggling from the field all season long, and in his most recent game against the most recent win against the Los Angeles Lakers, we saw him pour in 31 points. He went 9 of 25 from the field, but he went 5 of 13 from the 3-point line. So that is a really encouraging sight for Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks. So with that being said, the Atlanta Hawks, with how they've been able to make up those points while they've been kind of struggling. I wouldn't even say struggling, but not being fully optimized in the half-court sets. They become a team that could lean on their defense, lean on their athleticism, and they really dominate the transition game. They're one of the fastest playing teams in the NBA. They rank 3rd in pace. So these guys, if they're getting a steal, if they're getting a stop and a rebound, they're pushing transition, and it makes a bunch of sense, because they have some tremendous athletes on the team. Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, the number 1 overall pick Zachary Rizashay. Somebody spelled it out with like a Z in the comment section, and I read it in my mind. That's exactly how I'm hearing the announcers and the commentators say it on TV. So I hope I got it right there. But they have athletes all over the place. They have rim runners, so they get out in transition and they put on a show. So this has been something that's really been able to hold them down until they're starting to become a more efficient and prolific team in the half court. And I think over the span of their 6-game winning streak, we're definitely starting to see that. We seen them jump up in offensive rating from the last time I made a video up on these guys. They've also jumped up in points per game, and they really jumped up in defensive rating. The last time I talked about them, 20th in the NBA and in defensive rating, and now they're all the way at number 14. So each and every game, this is a young team. And when you got young players, when you get some confidence and you got them believing in themselves, it could be very, very dangerous. But now we're seeing the Atlanta Hawks. Now we're seeing Trae Young. Hopefully that game with the Los Angeles Lakers, hitting 5 3-pointers. Hopefully, that gets his touch back into him a little bit. We see Bogdanovich getting back into form, and then DeAndre Hunter has been lights out the whole season. And the Atlanta Hawks, I think their offense is becoming. It could be a very, very prolific offense, and it just makes so much sense. We look at how this team is constructed. It's actually beautifully constructed. When we look at their point guard, we look at their best player, we look at Trae Young, who has been having an unbelievable season, assisting the basketball. He's averaging 12 assists per game. That's pretty historic. That's a personal career best for him. And we just look at all these weapons around him, and I love this. This is obviously like the first layer of the Atlanta Hawks offense. We see what best looks we can get with Trae Young just being Trae Young, and we look at all these weapons they have surrounded him with. I want to look at their big man tandem. Their big man tandem is perfect for a player like Trae Young, a point guard, a pick and roll maestro. They have Clint Capella, who's one of the biggest centers, like just looking at him off appearance. So, he's setting effective screens down there, and then he's been a lob threat. He made a lot of money playing alongside James Harden, catching lobs, protecting the rim, and rebounding the basketball. He's been doing the same thing with Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks. And then off the bench, they have one of the best young centers in the NBA. And whenever Clint Capella, if he ever leaves the Atlanta Hawks, or if he ever, when he decides to step away from the game of basketball, they have a really good backup center who's really similar in Okongwu, has a little bit more skill to him when it comes to scoring the basketball. But I love this big man tandem that they have for Trae Young. And now we look at all these guys that they have at the wing spot and the guard spot. They have Jalen Johnson. You guys know I've been giving him so many props over this last week or so, and I just became like a fan of him. Like, it's actually fun to watch him play the game of basketball. But I think he is also a perfect fit around Trae Young, because he can do a little bit of everything. And one action that's really good between him and Trae Young is their two-man game. And then they have one of those two bigs we just talked about. They have one of those guys on that deep baseline, on that dunker spot, and Jalen Johnson. He can catch that ball off that short roll, and it's kind of like Draymond Green with the Golden State Warriors. He can really triple threat. He can pass, he can shoot, or he can put the basketball on the floor and make something special happen. So I love Jalen Johnson next to Trae Young. He's another one of those athletes that can run in transition, run the wings. We done seen so many lobs between those two. And they also have Rizashay. Oh yeah, it's coming off real smooth now. But they also have Rizashay next to Trae Young as well, who right now, first year in the NBA, he's a plug-in play type player because he's so great moving without the basketball. We see him cutting a lot for the Atlanta Hawks. We also see him coming off screens to knock down three-point shots. He's another one of those guys that can get out in transition. So and I think this is like, the first layer for the Atlanta Hawks. They got Trae Young. He's an offensive engine, and he gets so many points, so many looks just off him being as good as he is at the game of basketball. And now the Atlanta Hawks, they've been able to outside of Trae Young, they have a few different ways to put up a bunch of points. The first thing I want to look at is their bench, and this has to do with Okongwu. Okongwu is really good. And then also those two guys we talked about at the beginning of the video that started off this season, started off this season a little bit banged up. DeAndre Hunter and Bogdanovich, these guys have been big time, and I like the tandem of them coming off there. I like the tandem of them coming off the bench. They're experienced NBA players. They've both been in the playoffs. They know how to score the basketball, and it seems like this has been something that's been really good for DeAndre Hunter. The numbers that he's putting up has been really been terrific, and then the way he's been able to score the basketball has been terrific. 3-point line, dribble pull-ups in the midi, finishing around the rim. We all know what Bogdanovich is. He's a shooter, and he's also a really good half-court scorer. So they have that layer. They are able to put their bench in. They're able to go to the second unit and get good production there. And then also they have another guy that they can run their offense through, and it doesn't look forced, and it doesn't look, the spacing isn't off or anything like that. Guys aren't standing around doing nothing, and that's Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson can take command of this team, whether he's getting a rebound, he's pushing tempo. He could take command of this team in the half court, being a pick and roll ball handler. We talked about him, how special he is off that short roll as a playmaker, as a scorer. You can play through him through the post, and he can be a playmaker. So the Atlanta Hawks, and they're a very young team, and a lot of this, that offensive rating, I'm sure as the season goes on, they're going to continue to climb that, because they have proved that they have so many offensive talent. But yet again, they are a young team, so they are going to have games where they have a bunch of turnovers or they have off nights shooting the basketball. But beyond that, beyond the numbers, this offense is prolific, and each and every game we see those numbers soaring. So something that was so crazy in that last game against the Los Angeles Lakers, Trae Young had 31 points, he had 20 assists, and then everybody that touched the floor for the Atlanta Hawks, except for two players, Clint Capella and I really can't pronounce this guy's name, but the guard on the Atlanta Hawks, number 27, he played about 14 minutes. Him and Clint Capella were the only two guys out of the entire rotation that didn't score 10 points for the Atlanta Hawks. Now that's just, and I know overtime happened, but still, that's just ridiculous. So they have so much depth. They're so good at the top of their team, and then they're so good at the bottom of it as well. They have a lot of depth. So I think the Atlanta Hawks, like I said, this team is really fascinating. They're very fun to watch, and they're getting better every game. But that's what I want to talk about with you guys today. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, comment down below if you agree or disagree, and then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man, and that's curtains.